Our next speaker is a person I first met. We're going to go over because I keep talking, but I first met when she was working with Gavel Club, so you know how much I love her already. April Gillis, come on up, April.
I first joined Toastmasters for a noble cause. Desperation. I was desperate. I was working for General Electric. It was my first job out of undergrad. We were in a rotational program, and you had to pass every rotation to keep your job. You moved every 6 months for 2 years, so I was far from home. My first rotation, I was so quiet. The parting advice that one of my teammates gave me was, April, don't be so quiet on your next rotation. By my third rotation, not much had changed. My test scores were so high, but my presentation skills were subpar. My teachers pulled me aside and they said, April, your test scores are so high that your presentation skills are actually dragging down your overall score. I was desperate. 1, because it meant my job. 2, you have to pay back the reimbursement cost for moving. I couldn't afford that. I was desperate. But I remember my mom preparing for this thing called Toastmasters. She would have props and all of these things, and I thought, what is she doing? But all of a sudden, I saw a flyer come across our company email, and I thought, that's that weird thing my mom used to do. I was desperate. So I went to my first meeting. It's my first rotation. I was at a manufacturing plant, and I went and they signed me up for my first speech. Wow, what a difference. My grades were so great. When I moved on to my next rotation, one of the instructors came back and found me, and he nicknamed me the comeback girl. Wow. That was my start, desperation. I rejoined Toastmasters when I moved back to California with my church family. And that was out of determination. One of our associate pastors wanted to feel more confident when he was giving his sermons. So he happened to have a private conversation with my mother, and he told her about it. And she said, well, have you ever heard of Toastmasters? He said, no. So she talked to our pastor, and that was it. A year later, he came back to her. He said, what happened with that Toastmasters thing? So she went online in March, and she found the club growth director. We didn't know what that meant back then. And a whole lot of nice people came to our church, and they helped us get started, and we were determined. They told us we needed 20 people. We thought, okay, great. So my dad became a Toastmaster. My brother was a charter member. And so many of our family and friends in our congregation, we were determined to cross the finish line. So by May, we chartered our club. We didn't know what it meant then, but we were so excited and we were determined. And I remember there was a gentleman, his name was Peter. I started calling him Coach Peter. He would come in every week with this paper, which I now know is the dashboard. And he called me AG. He said, AG, your club needs to be distinguished. Okay, what does that mean? I had no idea. But there were so many people who would pour into us. And what I started to realize through our club was that people were telling stories. It was the first place that I realized that my parents are people. Imagine that. My dad, Sergeant Major, retired, Vietnam veteran. And I learned how to delicately yield power to influence a Sergeant Major. Wow. But I heard his stories. I heard the stories of my mother. They became people. the other members of our church, we became people. We were determined to keep our club going. And I thought, wow, why do I continue? As Tom mentioned, the next generation. I always remember hearing people older than me would say, well, if I knew back then what I knew now, and that was the end of the sentence. Well, what did you learn? Well, what was it? I wanted to be older because I wanted to know what you did, and I wanted to know now, but no one ever finished a sentence, except in Toastmasters. That was the key. There was so much wisdom being shared, and I thought, wow, everyone is sharing so freely. You sped up so much time in my life. I need to pass this on to the next generation. So I stay, partly because I feel it's my duty, to go to the gavel clubs, to hear the youth talk about their ideas. And I remember one in particular that I went to, and Tom and Connie had invited me to, and I heard a young person express the dismay of his generation and what he would do differently, and his parents were so embarrassed. And I went up after and I said, no, he just expressed to you how he felt. Now you as your parents have the opportunity to say, I hear you and I empower you. What can I do with you? He's still a Toastmaster today after he turned 18. So I started because of desperation. I rejoined because of determination, and I continue because of duty. It's our duty to pass the baton from generation to generation. Our youth need us, they want us at the table, and they want to know how to communicate. They have something to say, they have something to teach us, they have technology and a lot more energy than we do, but we have wisdom and context. When we pair that together, we're unstoppable. We just celebrated 100 years, but our youth and us together, bridging together, that's the key to our next 100 years. Mr. Toastmaster.